Hey, this is Dave. I'm not sure where Mickey is. He looked like he was online, but maybe not. Yeah. This is Plato's Cave with Dave and Mickey. I'm hoping he joins us. Anyway, coming to you from Australia for Revolution Radio on revolution.radio, where it's home to fresh, unfiltered ideas and conversations. And you can see those either on air or in the chat room, which I'm at the moment. So reach out and say hello to me while I'm on air. I'm Narara, and if Meki's there, he's Meki. And the station's website is also a great place to get to merch. This is the 10th of August, 2023. Wow, how time flies. Catch us on air, online, and anywhere on your smart device. So grab an app to listen anywhere or listen at home on a Grace tabletop digital radio. No one, I think it's just replays on before us. But you know what? It's free to access the station's archives, and while you're there, get yourself some merch. And if you can't support the station by donating or buying merch, then share what you know with others. Tell them where you got that from and spread the word of Revolution Radio. Let's do that. I'm broadcasting from Darkinjung country, and Meki normally lives in Daruk country, but he's got the COVID, so I don't know whether he'll be with us or not. He could have fallen asleep again, poor fellow. It's really awful, to be honest. And I heard today that there's a new strain getting around through the US, so good luck with that. We're bound to see these bounce off the walls and come back at us over and over and over and over again, because just like the waves in a pool, it's just going to keep doing that until it diminishes. Anyway, I acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land where I am from, in the Darkinjung country, and I pay my respects to elders past, present, and future. Got that done? Excellent. Okay, so I wanted to say good morning to everyone for the first time, instead of just blundering into any kind of show notes or anything. But yeah, today I've got none. I don't want to say good morning to everyone listening. I can see Net Effect, Comet, and Jim Bob in the chat room right now. Maced is there as well. JW, Batsman, Jim Jones. Yeah, good on you guys. Hope you're listening. Hope you haven't fallen asleep. If you're on shift work, I don't know when you probably get off. Probably now, I think. I used to do shift work, and it was 7 until 11. No, 7 till 3, and 3 to 11, and then 11 till 7. That's right. Jeez, it was a long time ago. That was in the 80s. Whew. It's almost like a whole nother life ago. I was telling someone today about some of the things that I've done in my life, and I say, wow, that was a different life. It was almost like, like Doctor Who has all these different people who he is every time he has to kind of reincarnate in, like, straight off the back of his other existence. It's like, oh, that was kind of me, too. So anyway, I saw that there was either an assassination attempt or a successful assassination of the Ecuadorian candidate. Let me just Ecuador. Well, only if I spell it correctly is it going to come up with something. I'm sure this is riveting hearing me type. But assassination of presidential candidate shocks Ecuador. It might have shocked Ecuador, but I don't think it shocked the people perpetrating it. And the guy was surrounded by some bodyguards, but it was once he got in a car that wasn't protected by bulletproof glass that you heard them empty their clips or magazine. It's actually a magazine. Empty their magazines in through the window, and there was no bodyguard in the car to protect them at that point. So yeah, that's really bad. I watched the footage. So, yeah. I don't ask that of anyone. Like, no one should be doing it. Let's just put that out there. Remember, I think, isn't it vote with your feet? It's the... what was it called? It's the ballot box. And then... the soap box, the ballot box, and the ammo box. Right. So it's last. It's after you vote. There shouldn't be a reason where you need to assassinate someone unless, of course, because he was a presidential candidate. Who knows what power the current one held in order to orchestrate it. Or simply just someone, a tightly wound convenience store clerk was the... I don't know. I'm just making it up. But I don't see a reason for ever doing it. Since they're going to be an elected official, were they as popular as the person who perpetrated it thought? Were they really a contender? Or just too high risk? Because, in some equatorial countries, there's example of just locking them up or invalidating them because they missed one box on their application. On the form. I must have been holding my thumb over that part of the form when I was... Goodness me, right? And anyway, so it turns out that they're disqualified from running. Woohoo! 39 years in power. Continuous power, says the current leader. Who still held the vote anyway, even though there was no opposing party. That's where we're at right now. So, think about the next election and wherever you live and how that might be shaping up for the future. Will candidates be made ineffectual? I think they're trying that with Trump. I'm just going to be honest with you. RFK, doesn't he have he's got a voice. I know there's a reason for it, but he's got a voice that oh boy, it's not smooth, is it? Let's just put it that way. I don't hate on him. If I had to say anything negative, it would only be about his vocal quality. That would be it. Honest. And there was a band. This is no connection to a previous story. There was a band in Australia, and I don't know what kind of airplay they got around the world, but it was called the Dead Kennedys, and it's probably, I don't know, 80s, 90s, and I just keep thinking, RFK, you sure? Are you sure you want to run? Because your family's got a history, so you might very well get accidented. I wouldn't want that to happen to anyone. Once again, still the same kind of story as the first one. I think it's honestly it's repulsive to think that that's how you win. I mean, that's probably why I'm not a politician. If I would think that was repulsive, maybe a politician doesn't think it's repulsive. Maybe they're like, woohoo, I won. Yeah, but you won through dirty tactics. What are you saying? I don't understand what you're saying. Dirty. How do you even spell that? Is that a thing? Right, because they just won. They don't care. I think they abandon morals to become a politician. That's saying something. Only because once they get in, you can see them realize that the game is completely different than what they thought with their rose-colored glasses on. When you get in there, you realize that you've got so many different vectors of influence that tell you what you can and can't do. And then you find out that, well, you're just basically playing their game, and you can't do anything you got voted for. You can't. Nothing that you stood for is it going to be a thing. Oh, what's this? What are you pasting? Hey, Ahmad, painter's in the room, in the chat room. Good on you, buddy. I haven't spoken to you for ages. Oh yes, yes. Thank you. That was going to be my next story, and that is about the fires in Hawaii. Absolutely terrible state of affairs there. Like Australia had the worst bushfires to date on the planet back in 2019 before the virus hit, and I was watching the drone footage of these fires and how fast they were moving, and that's kind of what we were going through. It was pretty tough, and but we survived. 6 months of fires, and I'm gonna say there's some YouTubers that I know that live in Hawaii. I don't know which island. I don't want to guess, but I hope that they're okay because I watched a couple, and they've not been broadcasting for the last few days. So I don't know what's going on. Lucky that the hurricane missed the islands, but the winds were strong enough and from the correct direction that it wiped that small seaside town out. And that's pretty bad. It's pretty bad when that happens. Loss of property isn't as bad as loss of livelihood, because you can lose property and keep your livelihood, right? That means your business is running, the town is running, and just like massive lava flows that cut the town off or destroy houses, this is just another one of those things. I was thinking, how can it even burn? Because it's probably one of the most lush, fertile, kind of rainforesty areas on the planet. I think it's also advertised to have the best weather in the world as well. So it's probably got the cleanest air as well. It's awesome. So a great place away. Oh, I kind of really super jealous. Wish I lived there. Of course I don't. I live in Australia, and I live in bushland, which nearly burnt down last time, but hopefully we had a reprieve in the last few years, and it doesn't happen again. So all the things that people prep for, because if you live in that small town, now all the food you get is going to come from somewhere else, or you might be lucky enough to go and sleep over at a friend's house or what have you. If you've lost a house, I hope that there's room for you somewhere, and you're not just in emergency housing, but rather you've got a choice to live or build it up with someone, because the most speedy recovery is when you need the least from everybody, because that gets you on your feet quicker. And I really do hope that how many lives? I think was there 6 lives or something lost through it. I wish it was 0. That's all I can say. I can't get to a story quick enough. 36 dead. Oh, that's awful. And especially when the fires are rushing across the ground so fast that you can't escape them, and you might live in a place where there's only a single road in and out, and if the fire comes from the wrong way, you can't get out. So, and since they were moving so fast, there wasn't any ability to plan. You probably would struggle trying to collect your pets and put them in your car to get out. And that's why you should always have a go bag just ready for the most current things to go in it. It's got to be carryable, and it's got to be carryable if you're on foot, but it must have enough detail to describe who you are and what you own, and have food and water for yourself, only for yourself, not for anyone else. Everyone's got to carry their own thing. That's the kind of prepper I am. So we've got a plan. We even know if we're all separate that we have to meet at a certain place. And we have code words that if someone discovers something earlier than everybody else, they have to notify everyone with a code word. And that code word tells you what to do. Just the one word, that's enough. You hear the word and you just act. And that way you can get through most everything and survive as a family unit, but sometimes it's certainly not possible. And I had a mate of mine. I used to work with a mate of mine. We separated because the company split into bits. And he said one day, He said, "Oh, I'm building this house. I've been building it for like 5 years, all by hand." I said, "Oh, that's awesome. Well done." And he goes, "All this recycled timber, and it's beautiful." And it was it Jindalee? I think that was the place he lived, Jindalee. And when we had fires, nearly probably 20 years ago, we had some fires in around Sydney. And when I saw that they were raging through the place that he lived, and it's like, oh, I hope you. And it did. It took his house, and it was one of those cases, where there's nearly a whole mile of driveway to get to through bushland to get to the house nestled in the forest. But if the fire's coming from behind your house in the forest towards your house, and your driveway is clear, you're good. You can get out if you know there's a fire. So before I get to, I was just thinking then, there's some signs that you should be aware of if a fire is coming to you, and that is the smoke arrives first. The smoke arrives first, and at the very sign of smoke, like thick, ground-hugging smoke coming just to you, or it's coming from a place you can't see yet, but it's coming to you. The wind is showing you it's helping you. It's showing you from where the fire is, from whence the smoke comes. So you should always determine immediately what you're going to do. Stay and fight is one thing. That's really interesting. You need to have a constant water source, and that can get destroyed or turned off or vacated on you if the fire services decide to start saving many other houses near you, and whereby your water pressure will turn to zero, and what you thought was fantastic before is gone. And whether or not they have any appliances in the air, well, the wind was too strong to have appliances in the air in Hawaii, so that wasn't ever going to happen. And you've got to know that you can't trust or rely on any of those things. So just imagine your worst case scenario, plan for the worst, hope for the best. Plan for the worst, plan that there's no aerial appliances, there's no firefighters couldn't get to your area to save you or your property or whatever. You just get out. And if you stay there, you're just going to be crackling after the fire's gone over. And even if you live in a brick house, the windows can't handle the temperatures of the fires at like 1500 degrees and will fail. The wind, the self-generated wind in a fire from the heat, it can be 100 miles an hour. And it only has to blow some debris and your window's gone. That's the end of that. And your fire comes in. Even standing on the inside of a window, like inside your house, looking out without the curtains drawn, you can get burnt from the heat. So your curtains can just combust on the inside of the room with enough heat. It doesn't simply mean, the only way to get fire in my house is, up under the guttering, under the tiles. Hopefully there's tiles. If you've got wooden shingles or some kind of shingle, that's all over for you. But if a little ember gets under there, and there's embers everywhere, so the first thing you experience is the smoke, and then you'll get an ember storm, and that's now too late to go. At ember storm, unless you've got a very short driveway, and you can actually get out of there, because the ember storm is blowing. It's the closest to the flames, and the next is the flames. So, and they I'm not saying it's raining embers. No, this is the embers in the wind coming from the source of the heat. So yeah, that's never a good place to be. There's things you can do. You can block your gutters, your down pipes, we might call them. Block them and flood your guttering, your rain gutter, on your house with water so that it holds the water in there, and the embers fall into that and just gets, and they go out. They don't get to blow up underneath the roof edge. And because that's one thing, because the embers get inside your roof, and then they set your house on fire from underneath the tiles or whatever. So you want to try and avoid that. Yeah, just nuts. There's some crazy things. So, we've had floods. The typhoon that hit China was the most rain in the last 130 recorded years of weather. It was the most rain they ever had. They lost so much, and around Beijing too. Even they've got like 5 ring roads, and they lost a bridge there, and cars just careened off into the swollen rivers, and never to be seen again. You just make sure, whatever you do, make sure that you're living within the understanding of your environment, and you have enough wherewithal to be able to escape any disaster. Unless a meteor lands right on you, you should be able to survive a lot. Like if a meteor, for instance, let's say a 10-mile across meteor lands in the ocean, in the Pacific, anywhere, most islands are gone. Most people, most buildings, most islands, they're all gone. There's not much that's going to save you. It's just going to wash over the top. And that can't be good, right? Can I talk in the chat room with abbreviations where no one understands what I'm saying? I'm sure you can, Jim Bob. Yes, you can. I think you already have. With PSTMOCR. I don't understand what it is. Yes, good luck. So I wanted to put out there that your life is under your control. And just remember that. You should always have, one of those lithium-ion battery packs that you can charge your phone off, but don't expect there to be a cell tower in order to make a phone call or anything. Just imagine that doesn't happen. Imagine that you can only get an SMS through, but that's through multiple tries, and you, instead of flight mode, you put your phone into super battery saving mode, and you have this other thing. You might have a solar panel, foldable solar panel set with not an inverter, but with a regulator that you can use at least to charge up your battery pack, and always have your phone ready for use, at least never in flight mode, so you can be contacted at least by SMS, right? That's what you want. If you had one of those new SpaceX phony things that you could just use the satellites to communicate, and there wouldn't be any need for the ground cellular network. That'd be pretty cool. Of course, you could have Starlink, I suppose, and a laptop, but then you need a bigger power source. And if you're one of those 4-wheel drive camping kind of persons, you're probably already set up. Like, I've got a few friends of mine that have like some delicious setups. They've got, double fuel tanks and 3. They don't call it a 3-dimensional hitch because every one of them is. But this is like not a trucker's hitch for a caravan, but it's like a universal joint, to be honest. It's not a ball joint, it's a universal joint. And it's tremendous. So they can be in all sorts of, orientations from each other and turned, and and they're still good. So they've got one of those, and I know that one of my friends has Starlink and a laptop, and he's got an oven, and it's just a little mini house, right, on wheels. And it doesn't look like a regular caravan either. It's got a really high clearance, and so wherever the front vehicle, which has really high clearance, can get around, then the trailer can. I think it's awesome. They could basically live anywhere as long as they've got enough food. And it's all about food. And water, of course. So what's the first thing you need? Water. What's the second you need? Shelter. And the third thing? Food. In that order. Shelter isn't first. Unless you're in the wilderness all by yourself, then you would be building shelter while thinking about getting water, and then get your water, and then you can last, 15 days without eating or thereabouts while you're still attempting to source food. But staying out of the elements in the middle of nowhere is actually really tough. And the amount of insect bites you're going to have to get really friendly with those mosquitoes. Even any temperature, overnight temperature that is less than 21 degrees Celsius, you can get hypothermia. So you can lose enough body heat by not being protected enough in order to require very serious recuperation. Like those metallic blankets or sheets they wrap around you to reflect your body heat back at you, and so you don't lose any more. Yeah. So I really wasn't prepared for tonight because I thought Meki was going to be okay. He seemed like he was on Skype, and I've not seen another peep from him at all. Yeah. He's probably... I wanted to talk to him tomorrow and see how he's faring. It's been nearly a week. And I remember I was absolutely... I thought I was going to die. And luckily I was given what I call Pfizer-mectin, which is the same kind of technology as ivermectin, but it was the Pfizer's own version of it. And only, about 3 days of those tablets, and I was already so much better. But it was taking me pretty quickly. So without that help, I don't think I'd be here today. Just going to be honest with you. So I've not heard, and I haven't had any negative text from Meki, and I don't know where he is or what he's doing. But I wish him well, as I'm sure everyone else does, because listening to me perpetually, you know how it gets. I can get a bit dark, and I'm reminded one of my friends who listens, hello to you, said one time, I did a show on my own, and he goes, well, that was actually pretty good. I go, in comparison to what? And then he makes the joke about the Pinchy and Zappy show, I think it is. I know I've got the text from it. Krusty, here we go. So I grabbed I typed the text out, and then I made a conversion for it. It's like, kids, Mickey can't be here today, but instead we've got the next best thing. It's the Stinging and Battery show. They bite, they light, they bite and light and die. Lie and yay, yay, yay. You know what I'm talking about. I just love that. Good old Krusty the Clown. He's got to be. I like how they had the 49th anniversary, because they didn't know whether it'd be on television for another year to hold out to the 50th year. That joke is so funny. It really is. We had a TV personality in Australia, which was kind of that same kind of like mainstay on television. Everyone had the show on Saturday nights, and that's going to be the giveaway, because it was Hey Hey It's Saturday Night. It was started off as Hey Hey It's Saturday. It was a morning show. Then it was determined to be a little adult, so they pushed it out to the evening. And then it ran for like 4 hours every evening. And you'd have it on while you were getting dressed to go out. While you were, either getting dressed, or you had like a pre-party at home and left to go to somewhere else. And that was a lot of fun, because it was there. It was like you had invited them into your room to enjoy their experience, but it was all kind of like an extension of that. And we had this really cool thing that where no one actually watched it, but it was on, because you're just milling about and doing things. And one day they wound the show up, and the host, who I'd grown up with, he was like the mailman in one show, and then he ended up in another, and then it was the precursor to Hey Hey, and then it became Hey Hey It's Saturday, and then Hey Hey It's Saturday Night, and then the show was canned. And oddly enough, he was just so used to like the last 30 years of just coming in and getting his hair cut, makeup done, walk into wardrobe, get some cool clothes. But there was no studio. There was no filming. And they didn't know how to tell him, you've just got to stop coming in, mate, because your show doesn't exist anymore. It was so sad. And they had, if you have a look at, I think Red Faces, it's really terrible television. But we loved it when we were growing up because, there was no people getting upset about it. It wasn't intentionally bad. Sorry, that's wrong, because that'll be taken out of context. It wasn't intentionally, racist or offensive. It didn't do any of those intentionally, because we could laugh at ourselves more than anybody else. But looking at it from today's perspective, ooh, yeah. Can we tell them not to air that? Because that's pretty bad. But it was pretty much live to air. So I don't even know if they ran a delay. People were pretty well behaved back then, but it was shocking. Some things went to air that should never have. I won't point those out because I remember some of them. But was there a show where, when you were in your teens, where there was something like this? I don't know. You type it into the chat room if you remember anything, because that was what we went through. Red Faces was like it is the slightest, like a billionth of 1% of what The Voice is, or some talent, America's Got Talent. It really was just there to have a laugh. So people would come on with and either as well rehearsed as possible poor routines, or routines that were only ever intentionally there just for a laugh, and there was really probably no rehearsal at all, but they were funny. And so I'm sure there was some auditioning that went on to at least filter out the complete pork chops. That's not a derogative term. It just means, a certain type of people. So if I'm driving in my sim and someone pulls out in front of me, like on the street, instead of saying a swear word, my father would say something like, "Oh, what a pork chop." Carry on like a pork chop. I think that was the way that they could say it without swearing, instead of a silly bugger or worse. So anyway, so they would have these shows. These people come on, do an act, and they'd be rated by a panel of judges, and it was kind of like the Gong Show. Right, that's the closest thing on the planet, was the Gong Show, which I actually loved. I used to watch the Gong Show when I stayed in America for the year when I was doing my high school. I tried to catch as many reruns of the Gong Show as I could, and there was some really interesting acts on there. But anyway, so this is what this one was all about, and it had Ozzy the Ostrich, but it wasn't an ostrich. It was just a person with a puppet, like the emu. If you ever seen an emu thing, it was really similar. They had the musicians who were there every single week, and they would vote to give points to these people, and it really was nonsense. It didn't matter. They usually had, in the same show, they would usually have something like an international guest or a local artist singing, like a band or whatever as well. They'd have one of those do one or two songs, and besides this and like the spin the wheel, and it was a really good format, right? It went for ages. But poor the host, I won't name him, but the host just didn't know what to do with himself afterwards. And then they did a clip show, and he just kind of hosted the intro and outro, and that was kind of it. But you know what? I think they had to put it to bed. I think it was time for it. Even though we all complained at the time, oh, what do you mean it's quitting, right? Yeah, but we all watch it. And then we realized that we just had it on, we didn't watch it. And anyway, it was kind of sad. Kind of sad, I'm going to be honest. But anyway, it is what it is. But I told you the story for the fact that the host was just told to stop turning up. Just don't. You don't have a show anymore. Can you imagine? I don't know. If you can think of someone that you would think that would just keep turning up even after the show was done. Would it be Newman from Seinfeld? He just imagine if he just kept turning up to the studio. That would be pretty funny. Anyway, I had to tell you that story. There was a backflip in Australia's politics, and this was to do with the legislation that Meckie and I had spoken about, where a large mining concern had permission to create a mine right next to some Aboriginal caves, and the caves were like at least 90,000 years not occupied, but they were a sacred site, so you weren't allowed to destroy them. And the mining company was supposed to maintain their distance from the caves, and they kind of didn't. And it's like, those caves, right? Oh, you mean, so we didn't know, but you mean the one with all that we put the signs up and that, and you couldn't go there, and yeah, how come you got super close, and then well, that was where all the best ore was. Well, so did I say that out loud? Anyway, they got into trouble for it, and then there was some legislation put in place to protect the sacred sites, especially from the mining companies, because they don't really care for that, right? It's kind of like Avatar, but you're mining our whole planet. We don't care. Go away. Why are you still here? So they actually reversed it, and they reversed the change in legislation, and they've gone back to the 1972 version for some reason, waiting for new legislation to come out. But what it's really done is it just created a little gap in order, like a loophole gap. Before they introduce new legislation again, they've actually gone back, they repealed the one that stops them from touching the sacred sites. So who knows what they're going to blow up or take down or dig between now, as they've repealed it. It's only Western Australia, which has got the most mines now, or makes the most money from mining profits. Who knows what's going to happen next? Are they going to, I don't know, start fracking at some other place? Maybe there's a water hole. Now you can't drink from the water anymore because, use wastewater or whatever. I don't know what the plan is. But I'm going to say keep watching this space, because we might be reading out a news story where some mining concern has taken advantage of the loophole. And that would be really bad. Because right now, with the voice to Parliament thing that no one can really work out what on earth it means, this is just the wrong time to start doing that. And I honestly, I'm clutching at straws, trying to determine why they would do it. Not just leave it in place, just leave it there. Leave it in place till we have a new one. No, let's repeal it. Let's take it back to the good old days. Yeah, where you could just blow things up and it didn't matter anymore. Because there was no punishment, see. But, they're telling us everything's going to be just fine. So that's what I'm thinking. Everything's just going to be fine. In your world, just the last 15 minutes, in your world, what's changed since the David Grush declaration of the alien ships and the bodies, or actually the non-human intelligence and the non-human biologics and all these weird-shaped craft that don't behave according to our known physics models? So think about what that means to you as this news starts to change. Because I think the Pentagon said, there ain't no proof of aliens. That voice was, and I apologize to every American who I've just offended. I don't want no silicone diode. That was from War Games. That too is also an abomination of an accent. So, what's going to change in your life, do you think? How is it going to make you feel if they, maybe there's a press conference on the White House lawn or something, and they have an actual alien there? Or it wouldn't be on the White House lawn, because someone would shoot it, right? In some bunker somewhere. They do a live cross, and there's, well, let's just not say let's say it's the next president, right? It's not Biden, because you'd probably call it Mother. Did you remember that time when he was on giving a speech? He was on a stage, and there was a rather large and steep chair arrangement in front of him, like it could have been a university hall or something like that. And he's going, "Mama, is that you, Mama?" oh boy. Was he having a moment? Was that where the light started shining on him and he thought, maybe he was going to heaven? I don't know. So, would it change your life to understand that stuff that's coming out now about the non-human intelligence, which could be AI intelligence, and it could be insectoid, could be bipedal life, or some other kind of crazy life. It could be some kind of life forms that we've not anticipated in finding. Maybe the universe isn't Star Trek, where the only difference is a bit of a forehead, maybe a brow ridge, or a crinkly nose, right? Or a skin colour. They're the only differences, surely. I'll tell you, it's cheaper on makeup if that's the only difference. Maybe is that enough for you to accept it? Not the Star Trek stuff, but the David Grush stuff, and now you're starting to hear the opposition voices within the US government, and they're saying that they don't agree with any of those words that he said. They're all lies. We don't have anything. Why, in fact, I don't know anything about them. Well, that doesn't mean anything that you don't know. It just means you don't know. You're not read in. There would be people who stand or work next to someone who has a higher clearance or is read into a project, and you wouldn't know that they were or they weren't. So remember that everyone says, "Oh, people can't keep a secret." Well, they kept the NSA pretty damn secret for a long time, and there was how many 100,000 employees or something, and they weren't talking. I would always wanted a crazy job like that, where I could just have a decoy answer when someone says, "Oh, so what do you do?" And you go, "I work for a greeting card company." That was Maxwell Smart. That was his cover. And I always wanted to be able to do that. I think it's because I was taught not to lie, and that by divulging a decoy answer, is it really lying? If it's kind of lying, because someone asked you a question, you're supposed to tell the truth. but you're not allowed to tell the truth, so you have to lie. In fact, you're meant to lie, avoid or lie. So that always appealed to me because I thought that was always funny. I'm sure my policeman father taught me too well. And when someone asks me a question, doesn't matter who you are or where you are, what your role is. People ask me a question, and I understand what the answer is going to be, but instead of responding with the correct answer, I'll say, "Are you sure you want to know?" Because I'll tell you, I'm not going to hide, unless of course it's confidential or it's a need to know basis or whatever it is, right? Because I've done work for the court system from an IT perspective, where I had to dig up old emails for a court case, and I couldn't tell anyone what the court case was or what was going on. I was just a contractor to come in to do a task, and I did, and I gathered the info, and that was actually pretty cool. That was one of the best jobs with an outcome that I read in the papers, nearly a year later. I thought that was pretty good. I really liked that. I really liked that part of one of my many existences that I had the opportunity to do it. The other one was I'd walk around the city and have a look at the buildings themselves. This little bit of a hobby at the time. I didn't know that I'd end up with clearance, and where I would work. But I walked around and I would observe buildings to see if they had any. Every building that has a public foyer that you can walk into, whether it's government or not, doesn't matter. And if there's a board with all the floor numbers and all the businesses that you can find, so you can easily find a business that's there and work out which lift you have to take. Is it low rise or the high rise ones? And you can go there. If you have a delivery or you're meeting someone, it's whatever, or you have an interview. So I always wondered when you walk into a lobby and there's nothing. No advertising about who's where and who's what, and you'd be lucky to find a number on the building for that matter. And there was even some buildings that they didn't welcome anyone to their front door. No number, the door was always closed, and it opened outward. It didn't open inward. So if someone was trying to run up to the door to bust it in, it was never going to go inward. And you could smack them with it by pushing outwards. It's just crazy. And nothing glass too, by the way. There was no glass. So I walked around, Sydney City and had a look at some buildings that matched that kind of lockdown. And some of them are telephony companies. So buildings that have been designed by a specific person for a specific need. Should there be, say, nuclear war, the building will stand, the infrastructure will be solid, and it's only of a certain shape and size and only reaches a certain height, and there are very few windows, but they're not really windows. They're kind of shaped like it, but they don't really have glass. Yeah, some really interesting things that I've noticed. But there was one building that was just like Men in Black. All the people that went in and out were all suits and all kind of the same. And it was a building that was had a large black front door. You couldn't see through it, and people would walk up to it. There was no button or anything. When they got there, the door would open for them and they would go in. But if you walked up to it, it wouldn't open, or nothing would happen. But very few people went in and out, and people didn't go out to go and get their lunch. And there was no car park entrance. So it was just a building. Don't know what it did, and I still don't know to this day. But my imagination reigned strong. That it was, you just caught the lift down underground, and it met up with a whole bunch of open space and functions. Just nuts. So I can't tell you the places I've been, but there's some in plain sight buildings that are operating current, 3-letter agency offices, and you wouldn't know. If you didn't know what to look for, you wouldn't know. And that just had me, here's something funny. So 3-letter agency was the segue. So I'm walking through the city one time on a weekend. I used to live just a couple of blocks out from the middle of the city. And so I'd just walk from there downtown. And it was good. I'm walking down the street. It was reasonably warm, a bit more than body temperature. Not terribly hot, but there was a guy in a suit, and this was when one of the, I forget when, it wasn't one of the presidents, it was another one. There was a Secretary of State or someone that came out. And there was 2 guys, one on either side of the road, both wearing exactly the same suit with the white shirt, and they had that little clear coil up to an earpiece. And they're walking on either side of the road, down the road in the same direction, kind of strafing the road for people, because there would be someone following from behind later. And as they're walking down the street, I decided to play a fool, to be an idiot. And as I was approaching the person that was walking in the opposite direction, walking towards me, but also behind me, about, say, 20 yards back, was this guy, right, with the curly earpiece. And they hit both the same guy on my side and the other side were identical, not in looks but in clothing and shoes and suit and everything. So I stopped the person that I was about to walk past and said, I don't know what's going on, but there's these 2 guys and they're following me, and they weren't. And then I said, just don't look at them, don't. And of course that would cause them to look, and then they would look back at me, and I'd be walking fast paced to try and to look like I was escaping. Really, all I was doing is catching up to the next person I could say the same thing to. It was really funny. And they walked all the way down the street, and I ducked into a shop to let them go past. I knew they weren't after me, right? But it was funny making other people believe that was the case. And I didn't even know who they were. I assumed that they were kind of there from the entourage of the Secretary of State. And if they weren't, well, then I've got no clue. Because they weren't Australians. They were definitely Americans. And you wouldn't be walking in another town in a suit in that heat and with the earpiece. There's not a chance. There's no way. Anyway, that was really funny. I had to tell you that story because it's just one of those extra little layers of the onion. I don't think I'd ever mentioned that before in 11 years. So don't forget to laugh and don't forget to have fun, because in another world or another country with a different audience, that might not have gone the way I thought it was going to go, right? And if you don't laugh and don't have a bit of fun, you'll probably never remember it. I think they're those little highlights and key points in my life where I've enjoyed doing something so much that it has stuck with me. And I remember a physics question from California back in 82, 83. I remember a physics question because it stuck out. And I told one of my girls' teachers at parent-teacher night, that's the kind of thing you need to do. Because if I can remember the question, I know the answer. So, think about how you might be able to entertain your class by teaching them at the same time. By introducing Brady physics. And they go, what kind of brand of physics is that? Oh, that's with Gregor Marsha. What? Yeah, okay, it's going to take a while. Have you got another minute? Because I don't, because the station's music's going to start any second. But I thought that was funny that I kind of turned him around to, instead of just thinking everything's incredibly serious, well, guess what? It doesn't have to be. And there's music. So if you haven't learned anything today, well, you can tune in on Sunday and maybe learn something then. But I think you did. And if you did, don't forget to donate, or at least tell people about this show. David Mackey's Plato's Cave. We'll be back for Shiny Side Out on Sunday between 2 and 4 a.m. Eastern. And in the meantime, have a great day.